So joining us with everything that's happening here in Europe is Daniel Lacalle, chief economist at the Tressis Hedge Fund, where he helps manage over $6 billion in assets, also the author of Life in the Financial Markets. Daniel, great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Daniel, you watch European economics and finance as close as anybody. How would you sum up what's happening there? Is it much of the same as what we're seeing in the States? High inflation, labor shortage, are you seeing it there in Europe?
In the case of the European Union, what we're seeing is a very uneven recovery. There are a number of countries that have fully recovered the GDP of the to the levels before the pandemic. But there are other countries that have not achieved that recovery yet. Spain, for example, and we have a very elevated level of debt. And the difference probably with the United States is that the recovery of the labor market is a lot slower. If you look, for example, at the number of furloughed jobs added to the very high level of unemployment, it is still a very stubborn level of weakness in the labor market. Inflation is also a concern. It is not as elevated as in the United States, but we have to remember that the population of the euro area in particular, but the European Union in general, is significantly more aged. Therefore, that level of inflation that stands about 5% on average is a tremendous concern because it's eating away the recovery for disposable income. It is completely eroding real wages and definitely showing that the European Union recovery is way behind that of the United States. And Europe must remember that we discussed this at the beginning of the pandemic when estimates of recovery assumed almost every investment bank and international body that the European Union would recover faster than the United States. It has proven to be exactly the opposite.
You mentioned just now that some countries are improving and back to pre-pandemic levels faster than others in Europe. What do you put that down to generally?
I would say it's down to a combination of policy. Some countries decided to reduce taxes to help the productive sector and to maintain as many businesses alive as possible, whilst others decided to simply maintain public spending at any cost and gave very small support to the productive fabric. No, so that is one important factor. The other important factor, I think, as well, is that in the countries that are lagging, you see, for example, that they have a fabric of businesses that is fundamentally very, very small companies. And therefore, what that creates is a much more difficult environment to recover, because what we're seeing is a K-shaped recovery in business. That what shows is that the majority of large companies have recovered pretty well. However, small businesses are recovering very, very slowly.
This seems, as you mentioned, to be a feature as we come out of the pandemic, or at least move through the pandemic. Where else, you're often called the big picture guy, where else do you see the big changes coming in the global economy through this pandemic?
I think that what we are learning after the pandemic and the subsequent recovery is that Latin America and the Eurozone are significantly lagging behind the United States and Asia. While we see a very robust recovery in Asian countries, and even with the slowdown of China, the surprise factor in countries like Japan, South Korea, etc., is significantly more positive than what was initially expected. In the case of Latin America, the recovery is truly atrocious, despite the recovery in commodities. And in the Eurozone, it is also very, very slow.
Again, I want to press you. What do you put this down to?
I think that ultimately it's been a very simple difference between the countries that decided to have policies that supported free markets, businesses, small and medium enterprises, relative to those that decided that they would go for the most aggressive lockdowns on top of bloating government spending. I think it's so evident when you look at the weakness of the recovery of uh, Argentina, of Mexico, of some of the Eurozone economies that have more socialist governments. I think that it's so amazing to see that the recovery from the pandemic has shown yet again that in the Eurozone, Ireland, for example, and the countries that have higher levels of economic freedom have risen back from the pandemic stronger. Yet the ones that decided to go to aggressive levels of government spending and massive levels of intervention, those are lagging behind. So it's again, it's proving that if you support the real economy and businesses and you support free markets, you recover faster. And if you decide to go down the route of government for government's sake, then it's truly negative.
Daniel Kai, Tres, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel, like my videos, leave your comments below, and keep defending freedom. Thank you very much.